thank you all the World Women Heroes who could make it here and could join us. And with that, I'm starting to get indication that we can move to the next session. And it's going to be led by another amazing woman, Rasha Goyal, whom you heard speaking, but she's also, again, a barrier breaker. So Rasha, take the stage, and it's yours.
Thank you, Rupa and World Woman Foundation. Good afternoon. I want to just acknowledge all of you for staying here and being here with us this afternoon. So hands up to everybody that's here. I am honored and excited to be moderating this panel. There's just so many stories that come to mind, and even as I was listening to some of the honorees today, just reflecting back on my own journey. So without further ado, this particular panel, we are focusing on color, culture, and leading the change. And how do we deliver social justice through our innovative work? How do we move past those barriers? We all will have barriers and have had barriers at some point in our life. And how do we move through that? How do we build resilience? And then how do we create a future pathway for our younger generation? So let me introduce our wonderful panel, starting off with Tamara Houston, who is the founder and managing partner of Icon Man and Code Red. Welcome. Joining us, Reshma Gujjar, first-generation American performing artist, actor, dancer, and multi-hyphenate. Maggie Freeling, Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter and producer and podcast host. And Adrusha Apana, an artist, filmmaker, and Emmy-nominated executive producer and the founder of production company Curiosity Entertainment. Welcome. All of you have such beautiful, diverse stories, I'd like to say, different backgrounds. So I'd love for each one of you to start off and tell us a little bit more about your work and what your hopes are to achieve as you move forward at this stage in your life. Who'd like to start? And it's open ring.
I guess I can start. I imagine I might actually be the youngest here. I don't know. I guess, starting off, I never thought I would be here. I never thought that I would be getting awards for, just trying to amplify the voices of marginalized people. It's never something that I aspired for. I just want to get people's voices out there. So that's really where I started. When I became a journalist, it was never a question to me. I started as an English major in college and very quickly realized I did not want to write fiction. I wanted to tell real stories about real people and in the process help those people. So like I said before, that was always just something that I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to take that privilege that I have of people who want to listen to me, that think I'm interesting, and use that to say, hey, but have you thought about this? Have you heard about this? And use that to help others.
Hi guys, my name is Adrusha, and as she said, hey Cindy, I'm a filmmaker and an artist, and I own a production company. We've got 5 TV shows, 3 movies going this year. The next show from the creator of Ozark is our next show to come out. And my last film was up for an Emmy. It's on HBO Max. I am first-gen Indian American. Grew up between India, Australia, and here. And I think when you're a child and you see the way that the other half of the world lives at a very early age, and you're exposed to that type of poverty and the different socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds and differences and the things that people struggle with, which I was blessed enough to be exposed to. My parents took us every second year to India. We would work with Mother Teresa's orphanage with kids who had nothing but looked just like me. And they wanted to be the same things as me. They wanted to be doctors and lawyers and Superman and Spider-Man. And when you ask them where they had learned that or got these dreams from, it was from the comic books they read and the films they watched and the music they listened to. And so going between America and India and these other countries, what I realized early on was that storytelling was my love language, because it was the only thing that would be able to surpass those socioeconomic boundaries and be able to change someone's feeling and the way they felt at a resonance level. So I tell stories, and I found my passion for storytelling because I think it is one of the greatest ways to execute change on a global scale. And I think it begins by filling people with hope through stories that we tell.
I am Reshma Gujjar. I'm also first generation American, which is such a big part of my bio. Anytime someone asks me about who I am, I'm like, first generation American. That answers everything about why I am the way I am. It's such a big impact on my life. I am a movement artist, actor, dancer, and multi-hyphenate. And I just want to continue to be normalizing brown bodies and white spaces and being more of a storytelling image. And because I know for me, I didn't see that, so I didn't know I belonged. And I think it's so important now that now things are changing and people are seeing themselves reflected, and it's powerful. It's so powerful, and I want to just keep being part of those types of stories. I want to, collaborate with my idols and people who are making those kinds of changes and moving people through their art. And that's kind of I just want to keep doing that. Collaborate with people who inspire me too.
Hello, my name's, as you know, Tamara Houston. So, as a woman of the world, that the world identifies as African American or Black or African diasporic, what I do is influenced by the perception of the world, my passion, what I lean into. So with that, with being what I do with regards to Black men, it's about amplifying narratives. And that really leans into, more importantly, how we amplify the Black community as a whole. When we think about where successful societies are, successful societies have they have male and they have feminine working in some form of harmony. When we look at the African diaspora, we are the only community that has systematically had the male influence removed. So when I think about what's the greatest love letter that I could give to my people, it is how do we start to bring that masculine narrative back into our community. As women, I think the greatest lesson that we know is that you can't love someone more than they love themselves. So with Icon Man, what we do is we create this space. Initially, as we started, we created this space for Black men of means and measure that have the ability to impact media and content, because we do believe that those are probably the most important drivers in society today. And how do they utilize that to create positive narratives about our people? From that space, we've grown into production, strategic advisory for various countries, and all things that are about the positive upliftment of Black people, and also how do we build allies and advocates throughout the world. So that's who I am.
Thank you. And I would just like to add to that also being that's important because I think sometimes when we're having women conferences and conversations, we forget about our masculine counterparts, right? And how we can also assist them through storytelling and conversation and communication. So thank you for sharing that. I was just going to add also, as a first generation South Asian American woman, this is a really huge thing. So again, thank you, Rupa, because I used to attend conferences and summits. I used to never see any other Indian women there. And so for me to be on this stage sharing it with especially 2 other Indian women, with the other women here as well, and again, Rupa leading this, it is a huge thing for our community. And really, I just feel so touched today as I'm standing here. I would love to ask you guys each about barriers, one barrier that you've had to overcome, and how did you move past that barrier in your personal life or even professional?
I mean, how do we choose one? I've got like ageism, lack of diversity in Hollywood, my parents, financial freedom. Which one do you want, guys?
What tugs at your heart, Reshma?
I don't know, pick one.
Ageism?
Oh, ageism.
All right.
Okay, great. Let's talk about ageism. So I actually love the elderly, love them. In fact, stalk them a little bit. And I want to shout from the rooftops how old I am all the time because I'm like, look what I've done and how far I've come, But I can't because I won't work. And it's really, really frustrating because, like I said, I'm very proud of and also can't wait to be in a space where whatever it means to have made it, then I can, everyone can know how old I am. But also, in performing arts, especially my first career, which I still am a dancer, but it was my first love and my first career that I really hustled. I I think one of the reasons why I worked for so long and still work is because nobody knows how old I am. And in acting, it's the same. It's like the minute someone finds out how old you are, they think you're too young or too old for the role. So it's like, you know what? Let's just not talk about age. I'm like Prince, I'm timeless. And that's kind of what I started doing. And that's how I overcame it. I'm just like, I don't talk about it. My family doesn't talk about it.
Me
No
too,
one
girl.
talks
Me
about
too.
how old we are. Which, it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And one day, I can't wait to be able to shout it from the rooftops. You probably can Google it later and find out. But I'm making it hard. I'm making it harder for you.
I think that I'm going to focus on a really interesting barrier because we all face, like as women and as women of color and as women in the entertainment industry, we all face unsurmountable different barriers on a daily basis. But I think that the biggest barrier that I faced was my fight with myself on how I showed up in my femininity. Because really, if we think about all these barriers, they are stories that we tell ourselves that have been fed to us by society, by our peers, by the men around us, by the commercials we see, whatever that is. And the only person you're really battling is yourself. And so for years, I would show up into meetings and try to be more masculine and try to look older than I was and try to do whatever these things are that we have decided and designed as power in a room. And I had a really big fight with myself, and it was one of my greatest barriers, where the artist in me just wanted to show up as the girl. She just wanted to play and create and have fun and be feminine and do all the magical things that are, let me say this twice, very powerful within femininity. But we as a society have stopped defining things like vulnerability, things like being able to hold space, accept time, all these things that as like they're not powerful. In truth, they are the most powerful characteristics of the human race, and all the females in this audience know what I mean. To have patience, to be able to sit in your silence, to be able to hold space without having to be the loudest one in the room, to be able to lead without having to be the loudest one in the room. But we no longer define them as powerful. And so for me, the biggest barrier was realizing that I was doing what society wanted me to do to have power versus leaning into the power that was me as a female, as a woman of color, as the childlike magic that I was meant to be, and then starting to publicly show up that way and expect the same power when I walked into a room, the same respect from the people around me, and the same platforms to still uphold me in the way that they did when I was showing up the other way.
I have absolutely nothing to add to that because I want the room to live with what Adrusha said. It was fantastic.
T's actually been there through my whole journey, so she knows. She saw, she held space, she had lunch, she fixed the problems. This woman is amazing.
Girl power.
Maggie, did you want to add anything?
Girl power.
Maggie, did you want to add anything?
It's going to be me. Okay, I'm actually going to piggyback off that because one of my biggest barriers was being me. When I was I started getting tattoos when I was 16. It's just me. It was a kid thing. But that's who I was. I liked body modification. And I also was smart. And usually in the world, those things were not perceived together. If you look a certain way, you're not intelligent. So when I went to grad school, I did get in looking the way I do. And I had a guidance counselor, career services person. I brought my resume and my cover letter and was like, hey, can you help me? I'm applying for all these internships. And instead of helping me, doing her job, she stood up while I was standing and went, well, first, what are you going to do about this? This movement in front of my body when I was 24 years old One made me question myself. Will I ever be able to have a career? Will I ever be able to do the things I want to do looking like this? And the answer was yes, yes. If you just look at me and judge me based on that, all of us on here, if you just look at somebody and judge them, you will never know who they are. You will never know their intelligence. I want a freaking Pulitzer Prize. And you bet that I sent that to her in an email. So, you know, that's always been my barrier, is just looking like me and having people just think I'm some dumb kid, you know, and I think I've proven that wrong, but I'm sure there's still people that look at me like that.
Are you starting to have fun with that now?
I'm having so much fun
Yeah,
with it.
I think so. You're like, what'd you think?
Exactly.
Yeah, barrier turned fun,
Yes.
yeah.
And when we look at change, we're talking about change here and how do we move forward. Through media, entertainment, and arts, how do you feel we can uplift women and deliver equality in a bold, new way? So how do we really create that change that we're looking for?
I think the first thing that we have to do is start doing deals with women.
Yes.
You know, that's the bottom line. It's women should not be viewed as your support system to come up with great ideas, to help you filter through great ideas, to broker opportunities, and to be your conduit. You should look to women as your deal makers. Because I think for every woman that's sitting in this room, in one way or the other, you are a kingmaker. Also, as women, I would say that we should be in the space also of not just looking outside of us, but start looking towards one another. What can we do within our respective networks to build, to grow one another? And it's not about waiting to be asked. It is actually physically leaning in and saying, I heard you, Adrusha, I heard you mention the show that you're selling in the Nordic countries. I know X, Y, and Z producer or a distributor that you should be meeting with. And not expecting an ROI, because we don't expect the ROIs from the men that we work with. In some ways, you're just happy that they took your idea. And they will take your idea, and you're never credit for it. So the first thing I'd say is, let's be in business.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of things, and I know a lot of the panels brought this up, but mentoring is a very big thing I believe in, and I didn't have a mentor like you, and I'm like, can someone
We'll mentor each other,
I need a
Reshma.
mentor still today, forever. And so I decided, I'm like, well, I didn't have one, so let me be one. I know what it's like to feel like alone. So let me just be one. I think being a mentor and finding mentorship programs is huge. I also think leveraging your power when you are graduate. I think, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm sure this is relatable. When you are, I think women, we just are always hustling. And even when we get to the place we want to get, we are still hustling. It's never like, I can relax now. We're just always working, even when we get to where we're trying to go. That we forget that there are people who are now entering the space that you just graduated from. And so leveraging power in those spaces for those women who maybe have more fear to say something, or maybe don't feel like they have power because they're new, and you are the voice who can, now I'm over in this space, so I can be the voice for you because I have nothing to lose. I'm not worried about my job. I'm going to help in this room because I have power here. I think that's really big. And then also on what you were saying, like pulling women up the ranks. And sometimes, because I think men have always just been given opportunities, and we have to prove our worth to even get the opportunity and our value to get the simple thing that's just given to our male counterparts. And I think pulling up women and giving them positions and working with them and asking them what they need and showing them, or when you don't want passing the baton, like literally handing them opportunities. Here, opportunities, take it. I don't need it, I don't want it, or you should do this and not me, and being women, being allies for other women, I think is just so major. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that. And yeah, not waiting for them to come to you. I'm a teacher, and I'm a NPR radio mentor 3 times a year. So I go to them. And, I tell them I was once you. I don't try to pretend that I came from somewhere else. I was you. I was a grad student. I was in this fellowship program. I'm here to talk to you about the mental health breakdowns I had. Don't feel weird if you're struggling. It's hard. It's really hard to be in these positions and have so much pressure on you and also be a woman, like you said. So I think it's really important to seek out those people as well.
I have a new mantra after this year, and it's take the space and make the space. So I ended up on my first location scout of the year, first film for my company earlier this year, and there were a lot of dudes on it. A lot of dudes. And I own the original IP. I optioned it, all these things. I won't get into the details of that set, but at one point I was told that this meeting was not about our feelings. Yes, and this still happens, right, in our industry. And what I realized when I left that, and actually we have a dear friend, Tiffany, who she had a very different experience on a set because it was all female set. And they had meditations and they had group healings before they went on set. And it was a completely different world. And her and I were sitting at lunch. I'm listening to her talk about this set that I dream of. And then I realized I did not take the space and I did not make the space. I was in a driver's seat where when I went to option that film to the other production company, could have said, as the person who owned the most important piece of the thing, the film, I'm happy to work with you, but 50% of our workforce needs to be female. A man would have been happy to say what he needed in that room, and instead I was like, oh, I'm so happy that you're making my movie. And I realized that I was the problem in that situation. I had created the problem. Yes, everybody, there's obvious other problems, but the point is that when we are in these places of power, we need to learn what our male counterparts have known for ages, that it is our responsibility and our right to take the space and then to use that space to make space for others so that we can create the environments that we want.
I want to add to, just tag on to what you're saying, right? I think it actually starts before we get to a space of perceived power. Your power starts the moment that you realize that you have a goal or you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life, or I don't know, what dress you're going to choose for it. Like, your power starts as a very personal thing. It happens in the quiet moment. It's not about anyone else. And I find that one of the most important things that we as women have to do is change the dialogue that we have with ourselves. In listening to some of the words, it's like, that conscious thought, right? You mentioned in your remarks the idea of proving yourself to someone. I want you to lose that.
Lost.
Because you don't
Looking
have to
into your
prove
eyes,
yourself
lost.
to anyone,
No, it's true.
right? But so we program ourselves with all of these narratives that are outside of us, and they subtly start to influence who we are in every space that we show up. It's not just our professional life, but it's also our personal life. And so the experience that you had on that set, yes, you owned all of these external things, but you hadn't owned your power inside. And that's how we have to show up every single day. That's the first breath of the morning, is that affirmation, right?
And let me tell you, it's hard work and it's ongoing work, and I don't know when it ends, but I don't think it ever does. So if you're feeling or listening and feeling othered in any way, that you're not part of this conversation, it is work I do, we all do every single day when I wake up, because it is so many years of socialization to the other, and then unlearning that, and then putting the space back in for what Tamara just talked about, the way we want to show up in the world.
I love that you mentioned that, Adrisha, because it is constant work that happens from the minute you wake up till the minute you go to sleep. And then I wanted to add, I mentioned this earlier, it's trusting you. Instead of trusting everybody else outside of us, you have to have that intention of trusting you first and then building from there. By the way, really quick, before we close out here, I have one last question. What's your film's name that's streaming right now?
Oh, I have one on HBO Max called The Survivor that was up for an Emmy.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's in my bio somewhere. I got a bunch of rad TV shows and movies coming out this year. So there was a pandemic. There's a little bit of a delay and everything. But it's going to be a good year in storytelling.
Can we get the sneak peek?
Excellent.
Can you tell us behind the scenes?
the short, I have the next show from the writers of Umbrella Academy, the next show from the creator of Fear of the Walking Dead with Alcon Television. I've got a television show with Rob Weiss, who did Ballers and Entourage. I got a movie with Anthony McCartan, who did Theory of Everything, Darkest Hour. It's about a Muslim female who comes into her power as a comedian. It's awesome. And I'm sure I forgot. And then the next show from the creator of Ozark and Diplo's next movie. So all of them are looking at culture from a different experience. All of them have female badasses in them. They're all the things that these women collectively stand for and have experienced, and teaching the next generation those things.
Love that. Well, and in teaching the next generation, I'd like to conclude by asking each one of you some words of wisdom, or what would your message be today to young girls that are watching out there? What do you want them to know?
I'll jump in. Yeah. So mine would be two things. And it's not actually just to young girls. I think it's really to women in general. Start where you are. First and foremost, everyone has their own race to run in this life. And there will be people that inspire you. You should not allow inspiration to turn into something that diminishes your potential, because you don't know what their gifts or their journey is supposed to be, independent of the course that your life takes. Know that you can always start over. You know, I think, you know, growing up, we were all very much in this space where our parents, for the most part, had one career. You know, you graduated from university, you work this job, you know, to put into that 401k, you retired, and you're like, this is what I do. I have had, I think, 3 careers to this point, from designing, fashion designing on 7th Avenue, to being an agent at William Morris and a manager in entertainment, and now producing a strategic advisory. Each one of those moments, I was empowered to do what I did because I had the skill set and the experience from prior, and I just decided to start from where I was. And once you do that, the second thing that I would say is lock in. The most important thing we will ever do in our lives, whether you are a man or a woman, is to lock into your vision, lock into your dream. Because that single focus, once you start to feel that momentum inside of yourself, it will just catapult you to wherever you want to be. Because not everyone will understand your vision. No one will share the same dream that you have. So those would be my 2.
Thank you.
I think for me, my message would be, especially in these times where we are told we have to be a certain way, or we're constantly being bombarded, being sold something, not feeling like just so much external stuff happening around us that it gets us further and further away from who we are and what we know. And my message to anybody, actually, but especially younger generation and females especially, is to harness and to cultivate their intuition. Because I think if you can tap into your intuition, I know that sounds really woo, but it's not. It is your best friend. It is your alarm system. It will never lead you astray. And as long as you have a strong sense of self, you're on your way, and nothing, and that is the main goal. You know what I mean? Like, everything will fall into place if you have a strong sense of self, and you'll never have regret, because you always followed this, which is, it's all the same. But yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, so that was similar. I was going to be mine is just be you. Don't let anyone tell you can't do something because of the way that you are. I mean, maybe if you're a cranky person, just be a little nicer. But, you know, the way you look, do not let anyone tell you. Don't change your hair. Don't cover your tattoo. Those people are not worth it. If they're telling you to change who you are, that's on the outside, not the inside. So I think that's really, really important.
Man, we all have the same message, so let me change that. You know, I think that this has been, for feminism and females in general, just like an interesting time where a lot of messages were sent to us from different spaces. And I think that if I could impart any wisdom onto my girlfriends, the females I know, the females I work with, it's to define femininity in your own way. Find out what is fiercely female to you. It's not always girl boss. It's not always, standing in the power suit and speaking to the big audiences. And it is just as uniquely powerful if it's dancing and creating a career of art. It's just as uniquely powerful if it's supporting in love. And so I would really challenge this generation to lean into being female and to know that that's powerful and know that you are supported by the girl in you.
Thank you. I want to thank the four of you for this beautiful dynamic conversation. Again, Tamara Houston, Reshma Gujjar, Maggie Freeling, and Adusha Apana. Give it up for them. What a dynamic conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.